Okay, recording in three, two, one. I'd like you to meet Marilyn Risi, creator of the Take Me Home Italy website. Marilyn helps Italian Americans find their families and heritage in Italy. She researches to find relatives and arrange for visits to their homes or towns. But she also designs individual or group adventures tailored for anyone visiting in Italy. She's lived in Italy full time since January 2017, so she knows Italy. Let's learn how to travel like a pro with Marilyn Risi.
Ricci.
Ricci, sorry.
That's okay. Everyone pronounces it wrong.
Sounds like my last name of Winans. People
Yes.
pronounce it every imaginable way. So
That's
let's
right.
learn from Marilyn Ricci. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. How can
Well,
I help you?
Actually, I'd like to hear your journey. You had lived in Minnesota before, and how did your life journey happen to take you to live full time in Italy?
Well, I am 100% Italian American, and I'm also now a dual citizen of both Italy and the US. So I grew up in a small community in St. Paul, Minnesota, a small community of Italians, surrounded by Scandinavian people, because those are the people that settled Minnesota. And in 1971, I made my first trip to Europe. I fell in love with Europe in general, and when I got to Italy, I actually met my cousins that were still living in Abruzzo. And I just found it so peaceful, so different, so calming. I wanted to know more and more about the country. I also love studying it and love art history and loved Michelangelo and Da Vinci and the Renaissance. So when I was visiting in 1971, I just fell in love. So over the years, I came back. So I've been coming since 1971. I decided now that I'm free, my daughter is grown up and has her own daughter and a life of her own, and I am no longer married. I could go wherever I wanted to, and I don't like Minnesota that much. It's a great place to grow up and a great place to raise a family, but snow is not my friend. And I decided I wanted to live by the sea in Italy, and I found a place. That's how I'm here. I'm very fortunate to have found my town of Chiavari in Liguria, so I love it.
Now, could you give us just a general idea of where you're located within Italy?
Certainly, certainly. Most people know about Rome, Florence, and Venice. Well, Rome is 3/4 of the way down on the boot. Florence is in the middle, and literally in the middle of the country, and Venice is on the east side. I am almost directly parallel to Venice on the west side. So I am on the Mediterranean Sea itself. So I'm near Genoa. If you look at a map, you'll find Genoa. And many people know about Cinque Terre, which is the 5 lands. It's very, very popular, and I'm very close to that as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very beautiful country.
It really is. It's gorgeous. Everything is here. Mountains, rivers, lakes, oceans, islands, everything. As far as, the ground itself, and then it has over half of the art in the entire world is in Italy.
Amazing place.
It is.
Well, what advice would you have for someone who's a first-time visitor to Italy?
Well, one of the first things I would say is read a little bit about Italy. Google it, check out different things, and then look at what you like to do. If you like to hike at home, there are many places to hike here. If you love art, as I do, you can see it in certain places. You see more of it than others. If you're a foodie or like wine, there are many different ways to experience, for instance, a winery. You can go to a giant famous winery, or you can go to a small artisanal winery and have dinner with the vintner
Wow.
and taste your wine with each course. So decide what you're interested in, and then we can match those things up. A person like me who helps plan travel, can help you match up your personality with what's here. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith that you can do this if you have not traveled in Europe before, but you can make it exactly the way you want to do it. and enjoy it very much.
And I've lived for 6 months in Italy, and I found the people to be very open and friendly. And if you even attempted a little bit of Italian, they were very forgiving of any mistakes. And of course, many people speak English, whether or not
Yes,
they truly admit it. But that's fine because they want to be comfortable. They want you to be comfortable.
that's true. That's really true. They appreciate if you can say please and thank you. Even just that is, it's just kindness to
Yeah,
do
just
that.
just good manners. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Driving in Italy can be a surprise for people and an adventure. What kind of rules of the road would you recommend for driving in Italy?
First off, I would probably not drive in the big cities. As you know, Venice, there's no place to drive because there are no streets, no cars. Florence, most of the streets are blocked off, so you can't park there. And then Rome and Naples are crazy drivers, and you really have to be an adventurous, fearless person to drive in those places, and then you can't find a parking place either. So what I do is I take trains everywhere I go to the big cities. If you want to tour Tuscany or Le Marche or different places that are off the beaten path of the norm, then it's easier to drive a car. Make sure you get an international license, and make sure you know the rules of driving, because you will get tickets 6 months after you return home if you rented a car.
Uh,
And
d-
you won't get it on site. You'll get it later, and then you don't understand why, and you can't argue it. It's Italy. So be prepared to drive the speed limit, and maybe not drive in the city.
yeah, you just have to learn the rules of the road and refresh my memory. I believe they drive on the right hand side of the road.
They drive on the same as most of the world. You know,
Oh,
they drive the same as we do.
okay,
So that at least makes it a little easier.
okay.
But
Now
that's the
you
only thing that makes it easier.
well, you had mentioned Naples, and that's where I had driven for 6 months. And you're right; it was a whole different experience. I survived it. I found it fun because I am an adventurous person, but it's not for everyone. So,
No, it's not.
and you had mentioned on your website that one of your favorite places in the world is Florence, Italy. What is it that you like most about Florence?
Florence is the home of the Renaissance. So I appreciate art. And one of the things about Florence is the whole city is like a Renaissance work of art, and you walk through it. There is perspective, which is the way when people paint, they make it so the light shines where they want it to, not the natural way, or they'll make things go this way to point the person's eye to see it. The whole city is like that. And then you have so much art there and so much beauty, and the river is fantastic, and it's just a stunning, wonderful place. It's also fairly easy to walk. It's mostly flat. There's two sides of the river. One is more touristy, the other side is less touristy, and more artisans are there, more people that are still making things by hand, and you can watch them do that. The food and the wine there, of course, is phenomenal. That's the heart of, right outside of there is the Chianti region. So you can go up into the hills there and have wonderful wine experiences, olive oil experiences, all kinds of things. So it's a real nice location. And it's just, for me, it feels like my heart is there. I don't know why. I'm not from that area of the country, but I feel like my heart is there. So for me, it's a must do for almost anyone to go see it at least once. So,
Very cool. And a lot of people travel, of course, with their phones nowadays, and they'd like to probably find an app that is very useful in Italy. Is there one or two you might recommend?
yes, I would say two actually. Rome to Rio, which is an app you can use traveling anywhere in the world. What Rome to Rio does is you put in, I'm going to be in Naples and I want to go to Chiavari, where I live. and it'll tell you how to get there. It'll tell you what the fastest way is, what the most recommended. You can book it right through that app. You can book hotels through there and trains and everything. I tend to use it more for directions than booking through there, but you can. For trains here, I usually use the TrainIt app. It's T as in Tom, REN as in Nancy, IT. It's a nice app for booking trains, but it sometimes don't have trains. So Rome to Rio will say you can take a train to Pisa, catch a bus 82, and it'll take you there. And so it helps you find your way around the country if you want to step off the normal path.
Well, those are both great apps, and highly recommend people go to their app store and see if they can download those and travel smartly. Your company specializes in creating Italian vacations with people who have Italian ancestry. Do you also work with people whose families are not from Italy?
I do. In fact, I probably work more with people who are not Italian or have family here because there are more of them. And it seems like everyone has a little bit of Italian in their heart. They want to come here. It's one of the most popular countries in the world. So I enjoy working with anyone because I do take time to figure out what is important to them. It's not a run-of-the-mill tour. There are some great run-of-the-mill tours, but I like to just make my plans to help them find what they exactly want to find. And I enjoy doing that.
Okay.
So I work with more people who are not Italian than are Italian.
Excellent. And your website is www.TakeMeHomeItaly, and we're talking with Marilyn Ricci. Well, Marilyn, what would you recommend? Would you recommend traveling to Italy sometimes of the year over others?
Well, it depends on the person again, but people like to come in the summer. It's very, very packed in the busy places in the summer, and also it's very warm. Yeah. So there are tons of activities, of course. So if you're not bothered by heat, and if you can sometimes go without air conditioning, because not all places have air conditioning, then the summer is fine. If you want it to be less busy, October is a wonderful time. That's the time that they stomp the grapes and they make their fresh olive oil, and they do a lot of wild boar cooking, and it's just very different. There are less people, the weather's still pretty good. It's fun at Christmas time because every town is beautiful. It's all lit up with different lights that instead of where we in the United States light up our own homes, they light up the city. They don't decorate their own houses. So the whole city is stunning. So I don't think you can go wrong anytime. You'll get less crowded spaces if you go off season, which would be November to April, as long as you're not going at Christmas or Easter. So it's going to depend on your personality, really. But summertime is not always the best time.
Well, let's compare December in Italy to December in Minnesota, where you were.
December in Italy, if you're in Rome, it has snowed in Rome a few times, but it's generally in Fahrenheit, 40 degrees, might rain a little bit, might not. Where I live, it's a little stormier and it's 40 or 50 degrees, maybe 60, but you have some rain. It's never below zero unless you go up to the mountains and go skiing. You can obviously go skiing here in the Alps and all over the place. Yeah. But in most of the places that tourists go to, it's going to be much warmer than Minnesota. Minnesota at Christmas time, I was there 2 years ago at Christmas, and it was 20 below zero.
Wow.
So I love it here.
Yeah, I can see why. Well, so the recommendation would be a pack for Italy, a rain slick, and maybe a nice jacket, but not a parka.
No, you don't. And no. And most of the people here don't even wear gloves. So no. I have mittens and gloves.
Yeah, I would be with you there also. It doesn't matter whether it's Minnesota or middle of Italy. I like to have gloves. So we've all had these in our life where I call them lessons learned the hard way. What have you learned when you first moved to Italy, or even now, lessons that you learned the hard way that you want to share with others and say, don't do what I did?
Well, I will say this, number one, you have to surrender to Italy.
Uh,
If you choose to move here, you'll find out nothing runs the way you expect. Nothing is the same. And when you're traveling here, it's the same thing. You have to realize you're in a different country. It's not the United States. You can sit at a table at dinner for 3 hours and the waiter will never ask you to leave.
mm,
But you might have to wait 3 hours at the post office to mail those postcards you want to mail. So those are the things you have to learn, and that the people are very kind, like as you said, and they're very good. It doesn't matter where you travel, but each region is different. Italy is a younger country than the United States because it was not joined together as a nation until the mid 1800s. So, for instance, where I live in Liguria, you're not going to get lasagna generally to eat here. You're going to get pesto. You're going to get fresh fish. Your foods are different everywhere you go. I particularly like gnocchi myself. So when I travel, I might get gnocchi in every different region because they'll always have a different sauce. They'll always have a different twist to it. So what we know in America as Italian food doesn't exist really here. It's different every place you go. And it's like nothing you ever imagined. So the other thing I would also say, if you're a person who likes a washcloth, bring one.
bring your
Because
own.
most
Yeah.
hotels do
Bring
not
your
have
own.
them.
Yeah.
Most hotels do not have them. So those are the things. And Advil, if you're a person who takes things like Advil, ibuprofen, those kind of things are expensive here. So bring a bottle, if that's something you take. Otherwise, it's less expensive to eat here and live here than it is in the United States, generally.
Well, one of my favorite questions I ask when I meet someone from another country is, what are some misconceptions that people here in the US that you've encountered have about your country that just aren't true? What are some of those things you've found?
Well, the food is one of them. The food it's going to be different everywhere you go. And there is no such thing as what is the white sauce that Alfredo. There is no such thing as Alfredo sauce. That's an American made thing.
So
So
it's not entirely like the whole country is Olive Garden, right?
it's not Olive Garden at all. No. And Alfredo must have been created in the U.S. The thing about Italians when they moved to the U.S., they mixed their cultures, and they worked with what they had. They didn't
Yeah.
have all the same ingredients. The other thing I would say is when you were in the South, like in Naples and even Rome and South, those people are more outgoingly friendly. In the North, where I live, or even in Venice and further north, they seem more reserved and they're a little quieter. They're they're not all the boisterous, let's all sing Funiculi, Funicula and dance, they're not all like that. So you just have to appreciate each kind. The people here are not stuck up or anything. They're just, a friend told me that before they open up to a straniere, which is a stranger like me, they want to know more about me.
Yes.
Whereas in the South, they just throw their arms around you and invite you over for dinner. So it's just a different way. It's not the way we think of it in the States.
So you have to take people as they are and
Right.
at their pace. Yeah.
And surrender. I always think about that. I have to surrender to Italy.
I think that's a great phrase to remember. Yeah. Surrender to Italy.
That's right.
Have you found some hidden treasure locations in Italy
Oh,
that you'd like to share?
there are several. Now, one of the places that is less visited is where I live, in fact. It's not touristy. I live in a town of 30,000 people. And even along the Ligurian coast, it's not touristy in general. People know where Genoa is. They've heard of Genoa, but no, not a lot of people go there. Most tourists do not go there. I've actually looked at tours to compare different famous tours. Almost none of them go to Liguria. So you have this entire coastline of beautiful blue Mediterranean Sea and beautiful artwork. Genoa is gorgeous, and different places to visit here that no one goes to. Then there are different small towns that you'll find. Maremma is a part of Tuscany. It's closer to Lazio, closer to Rome. And that's a place where they used to shoot spaghetti westerns, in the 50s. It's beautiful countryside. It doesn't have great train service, but it has amazing medieval towns. So if you're renting a car, that's a place you can drive and discover beautiful places like Capalbio is one of my favorites. It's a hill town that's just stunning, and a lot of art there. So there's many little towns in Maremma that you would really enjoy.
Do people in Italy, since you mentioned the spaghetti westerns, do they remember Clint Eastwood?
Yes, they do. Yeah, I mean, they do talk about cowboys, but they know it's not how we really are.
Well, no, but yeah, I'm hoping they kind of look at Clint Eastwood as like a second son, an adopted son, because he did so much for popularizing, as we call them, spaghetti westerns, and they really remade his career as well.
Well, you know that they love Kobe Bryant, who
Oh
just
yeah,
died, and he
oh
grew
yeah.
up here and he played basketball here, and he spoke fluent Italian, and so the whole country grieved when he
Wow,
died. Lots of
wow.
stuff on the news. I didn't know he lived here.
I didn't know that. After all the news coverage, I hadn't heard that. Wow,
Well, but
that's
here the news is different. Oh, that's another thing to remember. You're not going to get the same news. So,
well,
so
and
that was on the news for days, and in the periodicals too. So
well, and it's an interesting comment too, because we're so used to having things filtered through our news outlets, and Europeans report news somewhat differently, and certainly with their own local flavor.
they do.
Um,
And depending on the hotel you're in, you might get BBC, you might get Fox
yeah,
or
or Sky
CNN, but
News. Yeah,
Sky News, yes, you will not. You won't get, and you'll get their slant on it. The French slant or the Italian slant or Al Jazeera, whatever. So
well, one of the things I remember from my 6 months in Italy, and I watched, although I didn't speak Italian, I watched some amount of Italian television. I love their game shows. They're they're
they're
wild.
hilarious.
They're wild, yeah. And of course, we understand so much through physicality and gestures and so forth. And so I didn't need to necessarily understand what they were saying. It was just fun to watch the activity. It was just amazing. So,
Yes, you can't not talk with your hands.
well,
So you
yeah, and
can
I do that too.
definitely, you understand a lot more Italian just by looking at the people and judging their body language and their hand gestures. So
Yeah,
TV is like that. And they have some funny game shows.
yeah. Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed them while I was there. So I recommend anyone who travels to any country, but especially Italy, switch over to the local channels. You'll be amazed, I think.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Let's see. What would be one or two, and you've sort of mentioned some of them, what would be one or two must see, must do destinations in Italy or anywhere you've traveled that you'd recommend for viewers of Travel Like a Pro?
One of the things I think everyone should see Rome. It can be crowded, it's big, it's hard to get around, but Rome is it's the history of this whole boot. And it's much of our Western history happened in Rome. You walk around and there's newer buildings or buildings maybe 100 years old or newer, and next to it are the ruins from 2000 years ago. So that's one of the things. And then the Vatican, as much
Hmm.
as it's not to look at it as a religious thing, but as the savior of most of the art in Western art and even other art. So if you want to visit any art, if you're not a big art person, it's the Sistine Chapel is something to see, which is in the Vatican Museum. And then the Pietà in the church itself and the Basilica, and the art in the Basilica is stunning. And it basically you can understand some of what the people are like through looking at that art. because in this country they teach art in school, just as they also teach how to drink wine sometimes, and now they're doing ecology and so on as well. But they have a different attitude about life, and they take that art and beauty for granted almost. So I think everyone should visit Rome. One of the other, and because I'm a nut for art and history and so on, my other favorite country is Egypt, which I've been to 3 different times. And there you have history even older than Rome. So again, it's one of those places you have to be a little more careful than you do here. It's much safer here. But I would not be afraid to go to there or Turkey or some of those countries that are around the Mediterranean and experience history and beauty and a different way of life and bring it home with you, because then art changes you, travel changes you, generally makes you a better person. So those are places I would recommend.
Yeah, I totally agree. Travel changes you, and especially if you use your phrase, surrender to
Yes,
Italy or Egypt or wherever you're at, and take it
that's
on its
right.
own terms. Yeah.
You must, otherwise your trip is going to be spoiled a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people do travel for the growth. You know, we are who we are now, but when we get back from a trip, if we reflect, we realize this is really a small world, and people are in many ways similar. But it's nice to celebrate the differences too. So,
And they're beautiful just the way they are. Yes, you don't want to be this kind of person yourself or that kind of person, but they add color to your life.
yeah.
So
Well, in general, are there any travel tips that you've developed as you have traveled you'd like to share with others? Things to recommend, either things you take with you everywhere other than your cell phone. Uh,
I would definitely advise people to pack lighter than they think they need.
uh,
And because if you're traveling, if you're using trains, for instance, you are carrying things up and down and onto the train. I tend to travel with a carry-on and a purse, or carry-on and a small backpack. And I'm not a tiny person. I'm curvy. So and I have take medicine with me too. I'm getting to that age. So, but I travel with a 21-inch suitcase and either a day pack or good sized purse. And I bring my computer with me as well.
mhm.
I would not advise that travelers to do that all the time, but get a good camera. If your phone does not take good pictures, you get a decent camera that's light and you can carry it, and a washcloth.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the amenities that we, in traveling in the U.S., we just assume there's going to be washcloths in the room, but not the case everywhere.
Not in most hotels in Italy. So people bring their own washcloths. You can even get some from different sites that are disposable, kind of. So
Well, actually, I found microfiber cloths, and this sounds odd, but I shop at Costco, and I have no affiliate relationships. I don't get anything for plugging Costco, but they had a bundle of these shop cloths, yellow shop cloths that you normally would use if you're doing any mechanic work or cleaning up oil and getting off your hands. But they're wonderful because they're microfiber. They're a little larger than a washcloth, but they dry so quickly.